It's extraordinary because they're meant to be the sort of chilled, relaxed ones, aren't they? I mean, Nigel Farage, it's a sort of pint in hand. If he can't cope with what people are saying about him, or Zia Yusuf, that then you do feel it. And actually, as you said, Tim Montgomerie is actually quite mild mannered and very polite when he talks, and he has very strong views. But that you're allowed to, effectively, he's similar to a backbencher. You're allowed to say what you want to a certain extent, and nothing he's said so far has really crossed the line.
Now we're going to be unpacking the politics of the day, from whether Andy Burnham's job is to be popular to whether Zach Polanski should control the press, and also our new campaign to end the snogging drought. And leading that campaign is Robert Crampton. Hello, Robert.
Hi, Hugo. Hello.
We'll talk about that later. And humouring Robert going along with that campaign, it is Alice Thompson. Hello, Alice.
Hello. Well, actually, Robert and I have done a competition already about 20 years ago about who could snog more for the paper, so
what?
We're both experts.
That was 35 years ago.
35 years ago, I wasn't going to say that.
20.
Were you both married at the time?
I mean,
not to each other, obviously.
We were definitely going out.
Yeah. I think.
Wow. And this was all right, was it?
Yeah, we got into double figures, probably.
Simpler times, Hugo. Less Puritan.
Dear me,
times.
I'm feeling very, very Puritan and Gen X these days. Just considering I'm Gen Z, rather, I was going to say, which considering I'm a long way from Gen Z is strange. We'll come back to that nonsense a little bit later. First, let's talk about some news. The Times' Patrick Maguire has been speaking to Andy Burnham. He asked the Prime Minister whether he feels the need to be liked, and Burnham criticised politicians who make a fetish out of being tough and masochistic, saying, "Isn't the job to be popular by making people's lives better?" Robert, is the job to be popular by making people's lives better?
Only if you're taking unpopular decisions in order to do so. I think. I get Burnham's point about there is a kind of fetish for, I'm tough and I'm going to take this, let me be absolutely clear and all that Keir Starmer stuff, and Kemi Badenoch's fallen into it a little bit, I think. But no, ultimately the job is not to be popular. The job is to run the country, or enable the conditions for the country to prosper and be safe. And if you are popular as a result of that, then all well and good. But that is not the actual job description, no.
Well, so the most successful Labour PM of modern times, Tony Blair, he often talked tough. He talked about having the scars on his back from taking on vested interest in the public sector. He wasn't always popular. Funnily enough, when we were talking about this when I was talking about this on the breakfast show this morning, it came up right after we were talking about the ULEZ scheme in London, which sort of banned various cars in order to clean the air. And I think most people, probably not everyone, but most people would agree it's certainly been a huge public health success. You can't introduce something like the ULEZ scheme if you want to be popular, Alice.
No, and actually, I disagree with Robert in a certain sense. I don't think. I think they've all wanted to be popular recently. I mean, I think Boris did. I think even Theresa May wanted to do it. That has been our problem with politics, is that everyone wants to be popular and they want to be liked, and they want, and I think we've ended up with this populist politics. I'd much prefer to go back to a stage where people, realise that the Prime Minister wasn't there to be kind and nice and hold their hand, that actually they were just making the difficult decisions, and also with their backbenchers, that they were not going to do what was going to make people like them. They were going to do what they needed to do.
And also what is in the overall interest of the country is not necessarily in interest of certain individuals or places, like building a nuclear power station or building a new prison or building a new housing estate. You're going to make yourself unpopular with a section of society for the greater good.
I think that's going to be his weakest link, because actually I think as a mayor it's quite easy to be popular. There are very few mayors that are really unpopular because they don't have that much to do, whereas I think once you become Prime Minister, that's what Andy Burnham's going to have to learn to do, is not to be liked. And exactly as you say, I think, when you look at Tony Blair, it took him a long time to learn that, but once he did, he was much more effective.
But Blair's trick was to do unpopular things but still get elected 3 times.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, that's where the politics comes in, isn't it?
You've got to be unpopular in the right directions. Well, look, so Burnham, he has hinted he is prepared to annoy some people. He said Oxfordshire villagers are going to have to do their bit to house asylum seekers as well as towns and cities. That's not going to make him entirely popular, at least in those villages, is it?
It's not going to make him popular with Tory voters or potentially Reform voters, but I mean, he doesn't really mind about that. What he's saying is that the middle classes also have to play their part in this. I think he is going to find it difficult. I mean, that is one issue we haven't addressed. Is if you look at, say, the West Country or their whole areas of Britain, which really haven't taken many asylum seekers.
Yeah. We talked about this last week. Is this Pidlington or something?
Pidlington,
Yeah, I mean, not everything can stay precisely the same.
Piddington, not
Piddington.
Piddington is verging towards being rude, I would say.
Yes, I don't want to be rude about it. I'm sure it's a lovely place.
On the other hand, it's a tiny place, so that is the only problem, that it is easier to put asylum seekers in cities and large towns where they can be absorbed. Whereas if you are a small place like Piddington,
But then is that bravery, sacrificing Piddington to be popular in Manchester? I'm not quite sure. Look, he also told Burnham also told Patrick Maguire that Number 10 North, his base in Manchester, is going to take on the government's economic growth mission, take it over from the Treasury, freeing up the Chancellor John Healey to focus on the public finances. He compared Number 10 North to Harold Wilson's Department of Economic Affairs.
That didn't work out.
Although that, of course, did not work out. What do you think about the idea of this split, Robert?
Well, it didn't work out in was it George Brown, I think, was the he was, and I'm pretending I'm being falsely modest there. It was George Brown.
He was the Minister for Economic Affairs.
Yes.
Sounds a bit sort of Jim Hacker, Minister for Economic Affairs, doesn't it?
Well, it was an attempt to, the Treasury's got a dual role, keeping costs, balancing the budget and promoting growth, and they sometimes you can't do both. So that's the logic of it. But I'm not, it hasn't worked in the past, and whether this will make it work, you make it even harder by putting it in two different places. I don't want to be cynical. I wouldn't want to be cynical, but no, I don't think it will work. I don't think it will work because I think I don't think, where are the officials going to go, for instance? Where are the Treasury officials? Are they going to go to Manchester? I doubt it. So it seems to me that you're creating a kind of massive bureaucratic muddle.
They'll commute every day, thus promoting growth on the rail network, I'd imagine.
So somebody will be using
Alice, I guess the implication here is that one of the current problems that Britain has when it comes to growth is that you have, as Robert says, you have a Treasury that is charged with managing the public finances. There's at times holding back on promoting growth because it fears it may boost inflation and stuff like that. Does that critique ring true to you?
I always think it's complicated. If you try and split up departments, it never seems to work. And actually, it's just the wrong time to do it. I mean, at the moment, what we need to do is focus on, what we're going to do to get out of this mess. And the idea that we're splitting up departments and messing around, we've already done it with the Foreign Office and DFID, and that didn't work. And then you have to, they end up having new stationery, new departments, new offices. Everyone's fighting over the wrong things. They're not actually
growth of a sort, like I said.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, what does it mean? Effectively, it would mean borrowing more, I think. And jettisoning fiscal rules, and that was how you would. That's how the.
And actually, they'll spend a lot of time fighting with each other. There'll be a lot of sort of insider politics, and they will spend a year literally working out where they're going to sit. And that just seems pointless now. What they've got to do is get on with it, Labour.
Yeah, but it does sound like this is going to happen, nonetheless. So look, well done, Andy Burnham. He's done something that's unpopular in this room already. So, yeah, what a triumph. Let's talk about the Conservatives. They held a press conference this morning where the Shadow Energy Secretary, Claire Coutinho, announced plans to put lower energy bills ahead of decarbonisation. Listen to this.
We Conservatives are not in denial about climate change. It's the left who are in denial about the fact that their climate policy is failing. Look at where our emissions actually come from now. Just 10% of our emissions come from our electricity grid. Over 90% come from transport, heating, and elsewhere in the economy. There is simply no point having the cleanest electricity in the world if nobody in Britain can afford to use it.
So basically, the point there being that affordable energy is more important than decarbonisation because we've already done enough. What do you think, Alice?
Well, I actually agree with her on this. I think that, although we've had the hottest summer, there is still an element whereby I think we're messing around too much with the infrastructure, and that, I'm very much a fan of nuclear and always have been, and I think we do rely on that too. And when you look at the infrastructure projects that are going through at the moment and have to, and the complications and how much people are having to pay for their wind energy and solars, I think we need to keep going, but I do think we need to look at the cost and whether it's effective or not.
I just feel like I can see the narrative 20 years from now where we go, you know what, there was this time under Labour, there was this guy called Ed Miliband, and we came within touching distance of inexhaustible clean energy, and then we chickened out at the last minute and we ran away. Robert?
Well, I don't think we are within touching distance of inexhaustible clean. Wind power doesn't seem to. It doesn't seem to work particularly well.
Well, it doesn't work particularly well because your oven isn't in the same place as the wind is.
Do you want to do that for £500 more a year? That's the problem. So the cost of it is so extraordinarily expensive. There are other things we need to do. So you could say in 30 years, everything else disintegrated, but we've got this wind power. Is that what you want? You just don't know what's going to happen in 30 years'
It's
time.
the sort of difficult decisions we're talking about. Once you've built a grid, you've got it for quite a long time. Once you've built the wind farms, as long as the Russians don't blow them up the next time we have a war, which I think is something people don't talk about enough. you've switched on this kind of sort of this cheap energy that surely eventually does begin.
I think I'm with Alex. I think the big failure has been nuclear. I think.
No, I think that's definitely true.
I just looked up the figures. 1997, it was providing 25% of our electricity. It's now providing about 16%, and even with the current building programme, you're only going to get it back up to 25% by 2050. It's 70% in France.
Although falling, because they're not building any more either.
No.
Yeah.
There was a period where we got that wrong, and we got that wrong partly for green reasons. Yeah. Which now seem to have evaporated. We now all think nuclear's fine.
Well, I certainly do. But you've got to think someone like Germany did away with nuclear altogether a few years back after, I think it was
after Fukushima. That was the problem, is that people worry about the safety aspects, but that seems to have died down now.
How much?
And actually, they do provide. If you look at it, they do provide jobs. They do provide, the infrastructure. It's not. They are actually quite beneficial to areas as well.
Do you trust Britain to run nuclear power stations?
Well, actually, it's more that
a British Homer Simpson in every town.
Yeah, well, we have quite a stable country to do that. So I think otherwise you wouldn't. So if you have, I wouldn't. I wouldn't trust the Chinese. And I also think if you're going to have something like, if you've got a sort of tidal wave or you've got any of those sort of issues or earthquakes, you wouldn't. But actually, that's not our problem in Britain.
Hugo Rifkind here, currently unpacking the politics of the day with Robert Crampton and Alice Thomson. Let's talk about the Green Party, because they are proposing to give a state press regulator powers to enforce a conscience clause for journalists and also to restrict reporting on stories involving communities facing what they call discriminatory coverage. These proposals follow coverage of the death of the academic Jason Arday. They're going to be put to a vote at the Green Party conference next month. Alice, the idea then of a state press regulator that can enforce a journalistic conscience clause, good idea or a bad idea? Because I, for one, am not keen.
I know, it's a terrible idea, but also I think Zach Polanski, who spends sort of 8-9 hours a day on social media, he's not talking about regulating that, and that is the area that needs to be regulated, as far as I'm concerned. And with Jason Ardy, when you looked at it, people say things, I think, on social media, particularly on Twitter, X, where he's on, which are completely unacceptable, and yet he's not saying anything about that.
People like him.
Like him, exactly. Yeah. He's not regulated, and I think that's what... I actually think the press is very well regulated in Britain. I just think that actually what isn't well regulated is social media.
Yeah, I always find this is an odd one, because I know very few journalists are in favour of state-backed press regulation. And yet I'm always struck that when you speak to people in other professions, things that actually are professions, I always struggle with the idea of journalism being a profession, more of a craft, I'd say. But when you speak to people you speak to accountants, speak to lawyers, they're basically like, where the hell do you get off? We all have to deal with regulation. Why didn't you?
Because we're fundamentally different from accountants. We're here to hold the power to account. And sometimes that means, as it did a few years ago, we get stuff wrong and do things badly, but that is the price of doing things well and getting stuff right, which I think in the recent case of Jason Arday we actually did. I think our reporting was perfectly legitimate and reasonable, and what was not reasonable was some of the commentary attached to it online, which is what I think was the chief persecutor of that man. So Zach Polanski is... the Greens used to be kind of woolly, hippy-dippy people, and now what's happened to them?
It's an authoritarian.
Well, the issue they don't talk about is the green issue. So it's extraordinary with Zach Polanski that he's always going for issues that he think will rouse the young. Yeah. And they're just cheap, they're easy to do. He is the ultimate populist in that way, and I'm not sure it's working anymore.
This is
people realise now.
You recently liked a post of some guy wearing a T-shirt which was encouraging people to hang Nigel Farage. And he liked it, and then he wouldn't apologise for liking it. I think he's a really sinister, unpleasant individual, Zach Polanski, and I don't... The idea... He said, we've got to sort out the press. No, he doesn't.
Do you think he believes that, or do you think he just believes he has an audience who wants to hear him say that?
I think that's what he does. I think the problem is he's pandering to that sort of younger generation who they look at traditional media and actually they are more, I think, worried about it. They are more, it's like the BBC, which has gone down in trust, that they're looking at that, and he's just trying to stir them up. Everything he does is just to try and get votes, and I don't think it's working. Yeah. We can see it's not working.
They're looking at it because it doesn't necessarily always square with what their echo chamber that they're looking at on social media. But that doesn't mean that we're wrong and they're right. It's the opposite. Yeah. We're right and they're wrong. Yeah, we have the press is it's well regulated, it's self-regulated, and it's subject to the law. We have to what we print has to be true and factual. And you can say any old nonsense on social media, and Zach Polanski and people like him regularly do. So the idea that he should have anything to do with controlling the Fourth Estate, free press, is just monstrous.
In a way, it brings us back to what we were talking about with Andy Burnham and popularity, that a popular press isn't necessarily doing its job properly if it's always liked by everyone.
And the popular press, what is the popular press? That's in the sense that you do have to hold everyone to account, and that that and I think that's got better actually over the last 10 years, at least, and I think actually we have far more scrutiny now than we did have before, and and you're competing with online where there are almost no regulations at all. I mean, you look at on air, no one would swear on air, as we now know. Yeah. You're not allowed to still.
Yeah. Some people do, Alice, don't they? Yeah. Remember?
Well, if you go on X or Instagram, any of those, or TikTok, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
And I do feel that we have far more stringent rules, and that's right.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Let's talk about reform. The journalist Tim Montgomerie, formerly of these parts, was suspended from Reform UK after publicly criticising the leader Nigel Farage and the senior figure in the party, Zia Yusuf. He's now said he'll fight to stay in the party. He spoke to the BBC.
I am going to fight this suspension. I want to stay in reform. I believe that reforms, policies from immigration to crime to the ones that Robert Jenrick announced yesterday on welfare are the right ones for this country. I didn't leave the Conservative Party lightly. I think reform can reach parts of the country that the Conservative Party never will be able to. So I'm going to fight my corner in reform, and I'm going to make this a test case of whether it is a party that can tolerate free speech and dissent.
Alice, Tim Montgomerie, who we all know, I should say, but Tim Montgomerie, he wasn't a spokesman for reform. He wasn't a front bencher for reform. He was just a member of reform. It's a hell of a thing that you criticise the leadership of a party that you're merely a member of and they kick you out, isn't it?
Well, it's extraordinary because they're meant to be the sort of chilled, relaxed ones, aren't they? I mean, Nigel Farage, it's a sort of pint in hand. If he can't cope with what people are saying about him, or Zia Yusuf, that then you do feel it. And actually, as he said, Tim Montgomerie is actually quite mild-mannered and very polite when he talks, and he has very strong views, but that you're allowed to if you're. I mean, effectively, he's similar to a backbencher. You're allowed to say what you want to a certain extent, and nothing he's said so far has really crossed the line.
He's not even a backbencher. He's just a member of the party. Yeah. He's just a member.
I think it's one of the. I can't remember who pointed. It might have been Tom Peck who pointed out recently that Nigel Farage, he doesn't really fit the English everyman model, but partly because he hasn't really got much of a sense of humour, and he hasn't got. He's not very. He can't take a punch. Yeah, and he. So I don't think he's yes, he's the guy in the pub, but as long as you're agreeing with him, and so.
Yeah, he's incredibly thin-skinned, which is strange.
Yeah. So Tim Montgomerie says he wants to make it a test case. Well, his test case has already been proven. It's not a party of free speech and broad church. They kicked him out. So
does it point to a fundamental division that we know is in reform but becomes more stark in cases like this, which is that you have basically the Tory defectors on one side and the likes of Zia Yusuf, and perhaps Farage, although he sort of sits in the middle, on the other.
It's not just that, it's the fact that Nigel Farage has never really got on with anyone else. So anyone who thinks it's a problem or a power threat, he gets rid of. And I think that is difficult for their party. And I think it's always going to be like that with reform, that they don't really like each other. They're a sort of strange mix of people who really don't get on. It's not like there's sort of different facets of them. Each individually, they really don't seem to like each other at all.
But I suppose there is a bit of a divide because those people, wherever Jenrick and Braverman are now, They joined a grown-up party at one point, and they were ministers having to make sensible, reasoned decisions.
And Danny Kruger
attempting to, Whereas the Zia Yusuf wing, if you like, and we talked about Zia Yusuf last week, and I suspect this is his work rather than Farage's.
Sure, I think that's probably true.
Seem to be, cut from a different cloth in terms of their political style.
Well, they have I guess, a theory of politics that the old way of politics of. Yeah. I mean, and Yusuf, he says it quite openly. It's not some analysis of his view that the old way of politics is too cosy, too deferential, too keen for everybody to just get along. It means nobody tells the truth, nobody has the fights they need to have, and he's going to be different.
But he sort of set himself up as the kind of enforcer of reform, hasn't he? The kind of hitman, and I think he kind of quite relishes that, and he's doing it. He's doing it again now.
Yeah. Do you think Do you think this will come to a crunch, Alice? That the various Tories of Reform, some of them, because there are Tories, there are ex-Tories in Reform, people like Andrea Jenkins, people perhaps like Nadine Dorries, who, let's be honest, that's where they were always going to be, And if Reform had been around when they entered politics, maybe that's the party they'd have gone towards. Suella Braverman seems to have been on a journey. Robert Jenrick seems to be on a journey. Tim Montgomery's certainly been on a journey. Someone like Danny Kruger's been on a journey.
Uh-huh.
Is there a point where that just becomes unsustainable and these kind of people need to be on a journey back again?
Partly that, but partly I think some of them went on a journey because they quite wanted to be in the House of Lords. So if you talk to people in Reform, that's part of what they want. They want more power, they want more influence, and they thought they'd get it. They thought they may even, they may get a shot at number 10. It was all about where's the greatest power, how can we get it? And in that way, I don't feel any sympathy for them at all. I don't think they had principles. I think they just wanted to get on, and they wanted the loudest voice, and they wanted to make money out of it. So, I do think that was a problem. I could see a couple of them going back to the Tories now, but if I were the Tories, I'd be pretty reticent about having them back.
And I think maybe Reform always used to be about stealing Tory votes in the south of England, and I think somebody like Danny Kruger would be very comfortable with that. But I don't think he went into politics to try and pitch to the Red Wall. And I met the guy, Danny Kruger, and he is not somebody who is comfortable buttering up voters in Ashfield or Points North.
Yeah.
That isn't what he's around to do. I think, obviously, Jenrick and Braverman are more sort of suited to that kind of populism, or what they perceive as what those voters want. But I can't see that Danny Kruger or indeed Tim Montgomerie are really going to be very adept at doing that, or feeling very comfortable with what they perceive needs to be done and said to win those voters.
Well, they're both people of faith as well, and you wonder how that, is a point where sort of Christianity rubs up against, I guess, Christian. I want to say Christian nationalism.
I mean,
Christian conservatism.
I agree. I interviewed James Orr, who's the kind of he's not officially aligned to Reform, but he's mates with them, and he's the guy who brought J.D. Vance over a couple of summers ago. Now he's a Christian purist. He thinks conception, life begins at conception. No excuse, no
nuance.
No exceptions.
Yeah.
So how's that going to play in kind of the Red Wall, Middle England? Call it what you will. It's not a natural fit.
That's what's so fascinating about these kind of sort of what look like little political stories, the signs of much, much bigger flashpoints. Let's move on. Alice, you've written in the Times today about Japanese philosophy. How many columnists can say that? It's about how main character energy is making us all miserable. You come here, you tell me this on my show.
Yeah, well, exactly. You're not part of it because actually you're so highly successful. But it is talking about this book by Ishiro Kashimi, who wrote a book about why we need to be more ordinary. And there is a sense of that. And ordinary we now think as a slur. So if you said, God, you're really ordinary, it sounds like you're mundane, you're boring, you're pedestrian, middle of the road. And in fact, what he's saying is, no, the whole point is that we're constantly trying to strive to be sort of extraordinary and different. And in fact, that makes us very similar. And that if you always want to, have the best of everything and you always feel that you need to max your life. So that's what Gen Z would say. It was not just main character energy. They'd talk about maxing your life. So it's looks maxing, it's where you go, it's what you do, everything has to be perfect, and he's saying that is actually making us deeply unhappy and is also making us more mundane and boring rather than if we were ordinary or just letting us doing what we felt like doing.
But there's nothing wrong with self-improvement. Look at the God you sit opposite.
Yeah, but the self-improvement it's to the nth degree. Because actually, if you look at Robert, he hasn't done his lips. His jaw. He's not doing much with his jaw. I mean, it's pretty good, but it's not like he's snatching it that much. He's not like
my jaw's okay.
There's a certain element, and also we do a certain element for the paper. So there is an element of getting a tan or doing this, but we're not doing that much. You would go to the gym, but I mean, your life. I'd say actually, Robert's a pretty good example of someone who has
who's just really not making that much effort about their appearance.
No, but he's having a balanced life, aren't you?
Just going into very slow decline.
Robert, well done for being such a perfect exemplar of Japanese philosophy, it turns out.
Yeah. I like this guy, the sound of this guy. One of my favourite proverb ever is never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I think lots of people suffer from that. I drilled that into my children growing up. They are, especially teenage girls, I think have got this very bad academically and in terms of looks and so on. Get this terrible performance anxiety. I had it for a lot longer than I wish I had it, and getting over that is a big advance in life and happiness. without letting everything slide too much. So yeah, the idea that you're trying to max everything out and be perfect is a recipe for unhappiness.
It doesn't work in the kind of family situation where you're like, parents have to be these perfect parents, and you know, actually just good enough is okay if you're a parent. And I think that's part of the reason children now, the next generation, are thinking we don't want big families because it looks like so much effort.
Or we don't want a family at all.
Yeah, and then the young are feeling the same. So like if you're, 16, 17, 18, part of the reason we have needs is they're looking at it thinking we've got to have these amazing careers. We've got to have, we've got to be extraordinary. We've got to be different. We've got to be special in every kind of way. And that is really hard because most of us in our generation just got a job.
And it's funny because the British way didn't used to be this way at all. I mean, I'd interview a lot of celebrities, and the big difference between British and American celebrities is the British ones are always trying to prove how ordinary they are, and the really popular ones, Rod Stewart is a good example, are the ones who succeed in doing that. Good old Rod, he's just he might be a multimillionaire, but he's just a bloke like us, and his whole
normal
pitch
guy
is that.
But is it sincere, or isn't that sort of British kind of passive aggressive? I mean, Rod Stewart doesn't really think he's ordinary. He thinks he's Rod Stewart, for God's sake.
No, he to some level he does, and people wouldn't, if he was faking it, people wouldn't believe him because they'd sniff it out.
Yeah, and Kate
whereas the
Winslet's
Americans are all about how great am I? They're like So it goes against the grain, I think, of national culture to be this way. So for that reason, I don't think it will.
And the
last.
Northern Europeans are the same. So they definitely like normal, ordinary. So you look at Norway and you look at the World Cup, how they reacted to that. They didn't need to be the winners the whole time. It wasn't all divided into winners and losers. It was like, am I having a good time? Am I enjoying this?
Haaland,
and they did.
Yeah, Haaland was great. Haaland was the star of the World Cup in many ways because he took precisely that attitude.
Well, there we go then, Robert. No need to work on your jaw, it turns out.
I know.
Great jaw. He's naturally got a good jaw.
No, it's not what you said at first. Look, but are you happy about being ordinary? Because you did write a whole column this week about how much you love showing off, or at least used to love showing off.
Used to love showing off, yeah.
You've grown out of showing off. You're now showing off about how little you like showing off.
Yes. Whilst actually, if you noticed, also showing off about those things that
you once showed
flexing
off
a bit about being
I saw how it was done. You are the master.
Yeah.
Explain. This is you're basically saying you're saying you've noticed the influencers.
Yeah, my revelation was that there was an influencer who'd got her thing was swimming with sharks, and nurse sharks are very amiable creatures. You have to do a lot to wind them up, but she had managed to get a nurse shark to. Well, she doesn't do it deliberately, I suppose, but anyway, the nurse shark bit her, and there she was, kind of showing off her scar. And it seemed to me, it just struck me that an influencer is just a new name for what we used to call a show-off, which is something that I used to be, partly professionally, as we were talking about with our kissing story, or, when we were younger on this newspaper, you get given wacky things to do. It's a rite of passage. And so I was writing about all of those. And what were they really? I was just trying to prove something to myself, to other people, impress people, whatever. And that's all influencers are, just with a bigger audience.
Is that like a function of age? Because I sort of think, I mean, having been a prolific social media user, now that all the old social media networks, your Twitters and stuff, are just unbearable and unusable.
Yeah.
The only social media network I use to any extent, really just to look at, is Instagram.
Right.
And I find I'm sort of frightened of posting on Instagram because I don't want to look like I'm showing off. Because all the things that people post on there is like, look at this amazing cake I built. Look how great my guns are in the gym. Look at my amazing holiday that was better than your holiday. I don't want to be that person.
No,
but it's all about envy. That's the thing about Instagram is that is the problem with it. And LinkedIn's the same in a certain way, but it's all about, in my humble opinion, or this, or and that's all about, I've just got another promotion, or I've just got this, or I've just got that, and that's actually really irritating.
It's a shame that people think they need to do that. But I think, getting older, you mature, and and hopefully you think you don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, but again, I mean, I'd like to think it was just a sort of, from my own perspective, it's a maturity of I don't need to do that anymore. I think I don't have the nerve to do that anymore.
Right, yeah.
I think it's like, I'm going to look ridiculous.
I bet you do it occasionally with your kids, though. So occasionally I do it, like, on holiday, I'll suddenly think, actually, because they all, it's like, look, you may think I'm ancient, but I can jump off this cliff. Or definitely do that with them.
Yeah.
Like, watch me.
Don't get me wrong. My kids think I'm the strongest man in the world. But what's helpful is that they're right. So that's wonderful. We've got time for a couple more. A major study by the Independent Commission on Community and Cohesion has named the Isles of Scilly as England's friendliest place. I've never been there, so I don't know if that's true or not. But at the other end of the table, Barking and Dagenham in East London came last, with higher levels of loneliness and lower levels of local pride than the national average. What do you think, Alice?
I think it's totally true, because when you go to the country, you're kind of obliged to talk to everyone in the village, and there aren't these groups. And when you're in London, you have to find your tribe, and they tend to be quite homogenous. And actually, you have to get on with a type of person. And if you don't find them, it's very difficult, and it does seem huge and lonely. Whereas in a village, they're all now on Facebook. They've all got like WhatsApp communities, and you tend to know people of different ages, and you talk to people in them. And there are still pubs and shops. I mean, it sounds like everything's closed down, but it hasn't been. The Isles of Scilly are the same. It's all quite similar. There's a couple of shops. It's all sort of pretty 1950s the time I went, and very beautiful, and very, in a way, you can see why it's cohesive. I mean, it would be stifling if you were living there all the time for certain people, and that's why they moved to Barking or Dagenham.
But it's not cities that are unfriendly. It's just London. I remember when I first...
My bit of London isn't. My bit of London
Your bit of London is a stone's throw from Barking and Dagenham, though.
Yeah, but it's not... I reject
It all
this.
changes as soon as you cross the Hackney border.
I reject this idea that London, they don't know your neighbours and everyone's too busy. And it's partly, it helps that I've lived there a long time. My kids have never lived anywhere else. And, and within the small confines of, a sort of couple of hundred yards radius of our house, it's like a little... I'd say it's like a little village.
I remember the first time I spent any decent amount of time in London. It was back in the late 90s. I had a girlfriend, in fact, who's now my wife, who lived in London. I remember being in Sainsbury's in Camden. Come down from Edinburgh, just going into Sainsbury's. There's some kind of commotion happening outside the door. And I turned to the guy who's next to me in the aisle and go, do you know what's going on out there? And he looks at me like I'd both taken all my clothes off and pulled a knife and edges away in alarm. It's a very, very different place.
Maybe you were in
Camden.
I was not wearing a kilt.
That's Camden.
I don't know.
I've been to the Isles of Scilly and it's very nice, but I think I'm a bit disappointed for Barking and Dagenham, because I've also been there and it wasn't so bad. I'm sorry to hear that people feel lonely there.
Maybe you should step across the border and tell them to buck up their ideas. Look, we've got to do the snogging. I say, as a sort of rhetorical subject we're going to talk about, let's be totally clear here. In a completely non-creepy way, Robert, you've been writing about why you'd like to see Gen Z kiss more.
Well, this is another study. This, I think, is a reasonably legitimate one, saying that snogging is down to 27%, I think, something like that. People don't kiss.
How does one measure that?
Exactly.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think it was a toothpaste company that did it, so I suppose they've got a vested interest.
I'm so upset that I'm even going to ask this question, but is it only snogging if you do it with tongues?
The sort of snogging wasn't specified, but I would say so. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
because I think
Don't say just because I don't need any more. Just the yes is fine.
And I was saying, this is what a shame, because that's where it all starts. So, you've got the first base.
Yeah.
Either if you abolish first base, in a base sport,
then you've got to go straight to second base.
Second base looks a long way away.
Yep.
And
it's also quite a commitment.
Exactly.
I've got to be honest. I'm not quite sure where second base is.
No,
I don't think we need this conversation.
First base, I know. Third base, I know. Second base, I'm a bit lost.
Well, I think we kind of... I kind of know where it is.
It's the same base. You just never mind.
So I think if you're looking at... If there's no first base, then you're just going to... As I said in the thing, you're going to trudge back to the bleachers, is it? Never quite knew what bleachers were, but
I'm losing track of this mess.
Yeah, so what Robert's saying,
Alice, why is this happening?
Okay, for this generation, the problem is that they need consent, and it's really worrying.
Yeah.
And so, actually, a kiss before a snog was just like an introduction. It was like, I'm going to do this, and it was kind of standard, and you could say no, don't want it, and it was a very easy way of starting something. Whereas now, I think basically they're on Hinge, they're on they're on dating apps, and you're having to give consent through that, and you tend to, as you say, they then jump second, third base. Yeah. And actually, I think it is really sad.
Or they don't bother at all.
I think a better intro was a snog. I mean, it was like...
But you're not saying bring back the lunge, surely?
Yeah, I didn't mind a lunge. I thought the lunge... that was
the lunge was okay, and it was quite standard. I mean, it was quite standard. I mean, it was promiscuous snogging, and it was also a very good... It's a good test of whether you want things to go further, because maybe you don't.
I am devastated,
you have to
but also
bore each other with recipes.
Delighted to say we're completely out of time. Robert Crampton and Alice Thomson, thank you very much indeed, as absolutely always. This is Hugo Rifkind here on a lunge-free Times Radio.